නව ඩොමෙක්ස් වැල්ලම් සහ විස බීජ අවම කර දින 3ක් දක්වා ටොයිලට් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ව තමයි. ඩොමෙක්ස්.
In your headlines tonight, overthrow the system. Tension soar as thousands of university students surround Vijayarama Mawatha residence of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. Others march towards Presidential Secretariat. Police barricade roads to deter protesters. Calm the chaos. Public Security Minister requests immediate police action to ensure unhindered public transport services. Priority to ambulances, school vans, office transport services, vehicles transporting tourists and essential goods. To the Vatican, Sri Lanka's Cardinal together with 35 others to meet Pope Francis as they continue to press for international attention to 2019 Easter massacre. Fruitful talks. IMF mission chief refers Sri Lanka talks in Washington as fruitful, assures support for a timely resolution of crisis. All this and much more coming up tonight, this Sunday, the 24th of April, 2022.
සියට 100ක් දක්වා ඉස්සොරින් නැති 100ක් සුසිනිඳු කෙස් කලමක් ලබා දෙයි. Dove Anti-Dandruff.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us tonight on AdaDerana Primetime English News, and I'm Indiveri Amwat. Pope Francis will hold a special Mass at St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican tomorrow with the participation of around 4,000 Sri Lankans living in Italy in remembrance of the lives lost in the 2019 Easter Sunday terror attacks. A group of Sri Lankans, including those who lost their loved ones and sustained injuries during the attacks, travelled to Rome on Friday together with the Archbishop of Colombo to share their experiences on the horrific attacks. Speaking from Rome, Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit said they're scheduled to have an audience with His Holiness Pope Francis at the Vatican tomorrow.
Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, and a group of 35 Sri Lankan who suffered losses from the attacks on the Easter Sunday left for the Vatican in Rome on the 22nd of April at the invitation of Pope Francis.
පාස්කු ප්‍රහාරය පිටුපස ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙච්ච බලවේග කවුද කියන එක ගැන මීට වඩා විමසීම් කළ යුතුයි කියලා. අපි ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදීව ഘോഷණ කරගෙන ඇවිල්ලා රජයට බල කළා. නමුත් එවැනි තත්වයක් ඇති වෙලා නැහැ. මේ කතාවේ ලොකු කොටසක් කාපට් එක යට හංගන්න කටයුතු කරනවා කියන හැඟීම ආපු නිසා අපි ජාත්‍යන්තරයට ගියා. අපි මේ පිළිබඳව අපේ සුද්ධෝත්තම පාප් වහන්සේවත් දැනුවත් කළා. උන්වහන්සේ එකඟ වුණා රෝමේ සාන්ත පේදුරු බැසිලිකාව තුල අපි විශේෂ සීගැන්වීමේ වැඩපිළිවෙලක් කරමු කියලා. ඒ අනුව ලබන සඳුදාට ඉතාලියේ ජීවත් වන ශ්‍රී ලාංකිකයන් 4000ක සමග මියගිය අය වෙනුවෙන් යාඥා කරන්නට, තුවාල වෙච්ච අයට සුවය ලැබෙන්නට යාඥා කරන්නට සුද්ධෝත්තම ෆ්‍රැන්සිස් පාප් වහන්සේගේ ආශිර්වාද සහිතව අපි මේ වැඩසටහන සංවිධානය කළා. ප්‍රහාරයෙන් මියගිය අයගේ ඥාතීන් පිරිසක්, තුවාල වෙච්ච ඇතැම් පිරිසක් අපි මේ දේව මෙහෙයට සම්බන්ධ කරගන්නවා. ඒ අය ලංකාවේ ඉඳලා මෙහාට ආවා අපිත් එක්ක. මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල තුලින් අපි කිසිම දේශපාලනික ක්‍රියාදාමයක් නෙමෙයි කරන්නේ. ඒ අය සියලු දෙනාගේම දුක වේදනාව සුද්ධෝත්තම ෆ්‍රැන්සිස් පාප් වහන්සේටත් ජාත්‍යන්තරයටත් පෙන්වා සිටීමට තමයි ඒ අයව අපි එක්කගෙන ආවේ. ඒ වගේම මේ දුෂ්කර මොහොතේදී අපේ රට තුල දහසකුත් එකක් දුක් කරදර විඳිමින් යුක්තිය සාධාරණත්වයේ වෙනුවෙන් පාරට බැහැලා ඉන්න අපේ ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන් අපි සුද්ධෝත්තම ෆ්‍රැන්සිස් පාප් වහන්සේ සමග යාඥා කරන බවත් දැනුම් දෙන්න කැමැතියි.
Tensions were high today when the Inter-University Students' Federation launched their protest march from the Fort railway station to the Prime Minister's residence in Vijayarama Mawatha. The protesters were not deterred by police attempts to set up barricades. The university students were seen taking down barricades set up in front of the Prime Minister's residence and forced security personnel to a corner.
In support of the ongoing mass protests near the presidential secretariat at the Goldface Green, the Inter-University Students' Federation launched a protest march from the Fort Railway Station this afternoon under the theme, "Let's oust the government, overthrow the system." The Fort Police had obtained an interim order from the Fort Magistrates Court, preventing protesters from entering several roads, including the Lotus Road leading to the Presidential Secretariat in Colombo. Many of the roads leading to this area were barricaded by the police to deter protesters. The public was severely inconvenienced as many of the bus routes heading towards Fort were redirected. Those on foot were also inconvenienced.
ඕක ආබාධිතයෙකුටත් එන්න බෑනේ නෑනේ hi hello hi hello.
During the protests near the Presidential Secretariat, Fort Police handed over the court order to the convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation. The protesters then marched towards the Fort Railway Station where police announced the court order to the students as they were preparing to stage the protest march. However, a tense situation erupted when protesters attempted to damage the loudspeakers set up on a three-wheeler, which was being used by the police to make the announcement. Later, the university students proceeded to the technical junction in Fort and thereafter made their way to the Bauda Lokamavata. Upon reaching Bauda Lokamavata, the march proceeded towards the Prime Minister's residence in Vijayaramamavata. The situation was rather tense in front of the residence of the Premier, as the protesters attempted to bring down the barricades that were set up in front of the residence. After hours of demonstration in front of the Premier's residence down Vijayaramamavata, the protesters had made their way to the Goldface Green via Kolpeti. The protest at the Goldface Green marked its 16th day today.
Minister of Public Security Prasanna Ranatunga has requested the police to take immediate action to ensure that public transport services are maintained without any hindrance during the ongoing protests and demonstrations. In a letter to the Secretary to the Ministry of Public Security, the Minister has informed that priority should especially be given to ambulances, school vans, office transport services and vehicles transporting tourists. In addition to this, the Minister has instructed to allow vehicles involved in transportation of essential goods and services to travel without hindrance. Minister Prasanna Ranatunga has sent a letter to the Secretary informing him that due to the protests and demonstrations that have taken place in the country in the last few days, there were various obstacles to maintaining normal life of the people. The International Monetary Fund engaged in fruitful initial technical decisions and discussions with Sri Lanka about the island's request for financial support and welcomed the nation's decision to talk with creditors. Issuing a statement, Chief of the IMF mission in Sri Lanka, Masahiro Nozaki, assured support of the IMF team towards Sri Lanka's efforts to overcome the current economic crisis and a timely resolution of the crisis.
During the 2022 IMF and World Bank spring meetings in Washington, D.C., IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva and other senior members of IMF management met with the Sri Lankan delegation led by Finance Minister Ali Sabri and Governor of the Central Bank, Nandalal Veerasingham. The discussion centered policy actions to address economic challenges the country's economy is faced with as Sri Lanka struggles to pay for imports amid plunging foreign exchange reserves, a deepening debt crisis, soaring cost of living and rising inflation. Issuing a statement, IMF Sri Lanka Mission Chief Masahiro Nozaki referred to April 18 to 22 talks between the Sri Lankan delegation and the IMF team as fruitful technical discussions on Sri Lankan authorities' request for an IMF-supported program. The discussions covered recent economic and financial developments in Sri Lanka, the need for implementing a credible and coherent strategy to restore macroeconomic stability, and the importance of stronger social safety nets to mitigate the adverse impacts of the current economic crisis on the poor and vulnerable. The latest IMF statement notes that the IMF team welcomed the authorities' plan to engage in a collaborative dialogue with Sri Lanka's creditors. Chief of the mission of IMF in Sri Lanka, Masahiro Nozaki, assured in his statement that going forward, the IMF team will support Sri Lanka's efforts to overcome the current economic crisis by working closely with the authorities on their economic program and by engaging with all other stakeholders in support of a timely resolution of the crisis.
And we take a short commercial break. We'll return with more news.
Big 3.
And the Derana Startup 2021 competition in search of Sri Lanka's most outstanding young entrepreneur came to a successful close with Ushan Chaminda bagging the award for Most Outstanding Youth Entrepreneur of the Year. Chaminda won the competition for his innovative web application that would help students further their education. Venura Vijay Sekara and Menaka Kirti were named the first and second runners-up respectively.
Derana Startup 2021.
The finals of Derana Startup 2021, a reality program in search of outstanding young entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka, was aired on AdaDerana 24 last night. Over 5,000 applications from across Sri Lanka were received in the first round of the program, from which 30 youngsters were selected to demonstrate their creative entrepreneurial skills. In the next round of the competition, 6 finalists were selected through a people's vote, with an expert panel of judges reviewing the innovative ideas of aspiring entrepreneurs. Derana Startup 2021 found its winner. Menaka Kirti was the second runner-up for his innovation of an efficient wood-burning stove built as a solution to the current gas and fuel crisis.
Ladies and gentlemen, the second runner-up of Derana Startup 2021, Menaka Kirti.
Venura Vijay Sekara was awarded the first runner-up for his introduction of a technologically enhanced stethoscope that can be used by doctors to examine COVID-19 patients from a distance, providing protection to the doctors from the highly infectious COVID virus.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first runner-up of Derana Startup 2021. Again, Mr. Roshan Silva, General Manager of Large Enterprises of Dialogue, Isara Fenus will present the cash prize of 2 million rupees.
The winner of Derana Startup 2021, the most outstanding youth entrepreneur, was awarded to Ushan Chaminda for his innovative web application that would help students further their educational pursuits.
The most outstanding youth entrepreneur for 2021.
The program was launched with the aim of fostering an entrepreneurial culture in Sri Lanka. Young creative and innovative entrepreneurs can now look forward to the second installation of Derana Startup 2021.
Derana Startup Season 2, coming soon.
Taking you to other local news, 18 Sri Lankan nationals who had fled the country have reached Indian shores on 3 fibre boats and sought asylum. Now, the Hindu reported that the Sri Lankans belonging to 5 families and included children had fled the economic crisis in the island nation. The Tamil Nadu police had and central agencies interrogated them and handed them over to the Marine Police. A senior official said that with the arrival of 18 Sri Lankans, the total number of those who had reached the Tamil Nadu shores from Sri Lanka rose to 60. They were being accommodated at the rehabilitation camp at Mandapam. Fitch Ratings yesterday placed the national insurer financial strength ratings of 7 Sri Lankan insurers on rating watch negative. The insurers, National Insurance Trust Fund Board, H&B Assurance PLC, H&B General Insurance Limited, People's Insurance PLC, Continental Insurance Lanka Limited, Cooperative Insurance Company Limited, Sanasur General Insurance Company Limited, were placed on rating watch negative. Fitch has also taken rating action on Sri Lankan Insurance Corporation. Fitch downgraded Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation's IFS to CC. Fitch said the rating watch negative is driven by heightened near-term downgrade risks to the insurer's credit profiles, including elevated investment and liquidity risks, pressure on regulatory capital positions, and a weaker financial performance outlook. The RWN also reflects potential pressure on foreign currency obligations for some companies due to the stretched foreign currency liquidity in the local banking system. Fitch believes recent negative rating action on the Sri Lanka sovereign and on various financial institutions underscores the investment risk of domestic insurers whose investment portfolios are dominated by fixed income securities issued or guaranteed by the government, deposits and securities issued by local banks, non-banks, financial institutions and corporations. Taking into international business news, some Chinese state banks such as Bank of China and Bank of Communications will cut deposit rate ceilings on Monday, joining smaller lenders. The planned cuts come a week after regulators encouraged smaller banks to lower the ceiling for their deposit rates. The move will also coincide with China's reduction in banks' reserve requirements effective on Monday. Foreign media report that Bank of China will cut the rate for time deposits of 2 to 3 year tenors by roughly 10 basis points, according to 2 banking sources. Bank of Communications will make similar moves, another source had said. It was not immediately clear if other state banks, including Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, Construction Bank and Agricultural Bank of China will also cut deposit rates. But the sources say that state lenders typically move in tandem on rate moves. Beijing has repeatedly urged banks to reduce borrowing costs for smaller companies in an economy hit by COVID-19 outbreaks, fallout from the Ukraine crisis, and capital outflows triggered by US monetary tightening. Now, loss-making Credit Suisse could make and shake up senior management as new chairman Axel Lehmann seeks to put the embattled Swiss bank back on stable ground, Swiss Sunday newspaper has reported. Now, the Credit Suisse group is struggling to resolve legacy legal issues and focus on looming court battles, people familiar with the matter are reported to have said. Now, citing unnamed sources, the paper said Chief Legal Officer Romeo Cerruti, Finance Chief David Mathers and Asia Pacific Regional Boss Helman Sitorang were set to step down. These three were the longest-serving members of the bank's 12-member executive board. Asked about the report, a spokesperson said the bank had been implementing a new strategy and organizational structure announced in November last year that sharpened its focus on wealth management and scaled back investment banking. Credit Suisse said last week it expected to report a first quarter loss after increasing legal provisions, seeing business activity slow and taking a hit from the fallout of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And that's all from tonight's news on AdaDerana 24. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.